So Peter Beinart and Rich Lowry got into a really wild back and forth on Israel and Palestine. This is on CNN, so it's totally unexpected. I don't expect arguments like this to happen on CNN. That is Peter Beinart, however you say it, and that's Rich Lowry. Rich Lowry's very conservative. Pete Beinart, as far as I know, is not even like a flaming lefty, but he makes some great points in this clip, so let's watch and then we'll discuss.
Palestinians don't have to be saints in order to deserve the basic rights that all of us take for granted, right? Miftah has said things that I disagree with. They made an anti-Semitic statement that they apologized for. The point is, when you go there, I say this as an American Jew. My children go to Jewish day school. I lead services in an Orthodox synagogue. Judaism is the center of my life. The first time I went to spend time with Palestinians in the West Bank, it was a shattering experience. The only thing I could imagine would be similar for American would be going to visit the Jim Crow South. When you see people living under the control of the state with no rights, they cannot become citizens. They cannot vote for the state that controls their lives. They do not have free movement. They need a pass to move from city to city. They live under a military legal system. The consequences are more brutal than we can imagine sitting here. So, do I agree with Miftah? Of course not. I had a close friend who was killed in a suicide bombing. But Palestinians don't. You could have made the same argument if you went to visit SNCC and said, oh, they were connected with communists. Some of their people have made anti-white statements. The point is, what Ilhan Omar said is the most important point. People need to go and see for themselves. I've never seen anyone who's gone and seen for themselves and not been transformed by the experience.
Anyone to be associated with a group that supports terrorism. And this is in black and white. I mean, they publish this stuff. No one's forcing them to publish
years
this
ago,
stuff.
there were certain statements on their website. Hana Nasrallah has devoted her life as a nonviolent activist to opposing an oppression which none of us which does not accord with the values that any of us believe in as Americans.
So she doesn't control her own organization and what it publishes?
Rich, why don't you try spending a little bit of time focusing on the fact that almost $4 billion of U.S. aid is used to put children in detention.
You're the one distracting from the issue. I'm asking
No, this is the issue. You're distracting from the issue because National Review, just as National Review defended apartheid, and just as you defended segregation, you now defend Israel's oppression of Palestinian basic rights. It's a tradition for you guys.
Look, and if an organization supports terrorism, that organization should be beyond the pale.
And when Palestinians protest nonviolently, right, you discredit them as well.
So you're saying that, in some sense, justifies terrorism?
Of course it doesn't justify what they want. I've said again and again, I disagree with terrorism. What I'm saying is you're trying to distract from the real issue. The real issue is American complicity in the denial of basic
Palestinian rights was what it said at the end there. The clip cut off a little bit early, but goddamn. Wow, Peter Beinart did a great job there against Rich Lowry. You know, go back and listen again, and you'll see Rich Lowry, the conservative here, doesn't have any substantive point to make, so what does he do? He just keeps strawmanning people. He's like, you support terrorism? Do you support terrorism? Really? Seriously? And of course, you know, these are the same people who routinely criticize Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and say they're anti-Semites. From the same crowd that argues the left willy-nilly throws around false accusations of bigotry, they immediately jump to that when it comes to Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. When all Ilhan Omar said, which got her accused of being an anti-Semite, was, hey, AIPAC, the Israel lobby, gives money to politicians to try to get them to do pro-Israeli things. Which is true. That's all true. That's all true. And they act so triggered by it, and they just accuse them of bigotry. So again, they have no point. Now, but the most important point there in this argument is Rich Lowry is basically saying, okay, but obviously political violence is wrong and terrorism is wrong, and, you know, how can you possibly support that? And Beinart's response is, well, I don't support that. And also, every time Palestinians try to non-violently resist and change their material situation on the ground and gain their human rights and dignity, you still go after them. So they can't win. And this reminded me of Glenn Greenwald wrote an article years ago, and the point was exactly the same. So for all these critics of Palestinians, please explain exactly how you would approve of them resisting. Obviously, you say no violence because that's terrorism. So, you know, violence is off the table because that's terrorism, and terrorism is horrendous and bad, and you should never do it. But then, when they try a peaceful resistance, you still go after them and you call them anti-Semites. So, and by the way, what is the peaceful resistance? I hope you're sitting down. BDS, boycotts, divestment, and sanctions. That's a non-violent attempt to try to gain Palestinian human rights. So yeah, that's the thing. It's like when you do BDS, they call you an anti-Semite. They say that's beyond the pale. They say that's off the table. You're not allowed to do that. If they were to try violent approaches, you go, oh my God, that's terrorism. You can't do that. That's terrible. So then what are you okay with them doing? Oh, go negotiate with them directly. Every time they go to negotiate with them directly, the Israeli government says, you're getting nothing. Nothing of what you want at all is on the table. Not even half of what you're looking for. And then they say, oh, okay, well then go to the UN and try to get it solved that way. Well, they go to the UN. Jordan proposed, a peace agreement where right along the 1967 borders, where there'd be an independent state of Palestine and a state of Israel, and, divvy it up that way. And they said, no, that's off the table and we're not even interested in that. Even Hamas said, fine, we'll take the 1967 borders. Nope. They just say, we don't agree to any of that. So let's stop pretending like the Netanyahu government, the Israeli government, is in favor of peace, is in favor of, in any way, trying to give Palestinians their human rights. They're just not. And then all they have is shrieking in response when people try to resist. In the most reasonable way, in my opinion, is BDS. And by the way, just so everybody knows, BDS has worked in the occupied territories in that there's been a reduction of at least 20% of the businesses that were stationed there are no longer there. So you apply economic pressure and it works. And that's one of the reasons why they flip out so much whenever the conversation of BDS comes up, is because it's kind of effective. It also worked in apartheid South Africa. So the evidence is there, and they want to try to make it so it's totally politically untenable and you're immediately accused of anti-Semitism. So if you support it, you're a bad person and a bigot. And that's the whole point of this. And, remember that every time they scream about, oh my God, terrorism, and you support terrorism and this and that, just remember, when you say, of course I don't support terrorism, they're also not leaving you any out for resistance, any form of resistance. If it's nonviolent, if it's BDS, they go, you're an anti-Semite. So there's nothing you could do. They literally want Palestinians to just sit there and take it and shut the hell up. That's what they want. And Peter Beinart made a great case there. He said, listen, I've seen the material conditions on the ground. Don't tell me everything's hunky-dory. Don't tell me that, Israel is 100% correct here. Don't tell me that, because it ain't true. So, credit to Peter Beinart there. You don't see a back and forth like this on CNN often, and you certainly don't see people defend the Palestinian perspective to this extent. Really important, and credit to him. And you could see how Rich Lowry had no argument at all.